We're about to hear a defendant speak directly to the court before sentencing, and this moment matters more than people realize. A defendant's allocution, that's the legal term for this statement, is their one chance to speak in their own voice before a judge decides their fate. Watch for what she says, what she avoids, and how the judge receives it. It's rarely as simple as it looks.
Well, first of all, I want to apologize for my actions and take responsibility. I violated trust with a lot of people and hurt a lot of people. I've gone through some serious, honest looking at myself in these past 9 months of this and uncovered quite a bit that I wasn't acknowledging that I needed to work on. I hid a lot from a lot of people and myself, and ultimately the direct victims I heard were impacted, but my family, my husband has been affected both professionally and personally by this. My kids have dealt with public scrutiny because of my actions. It's their senior year and it should have been the best time of their life, and they've gone through this. The reason I asked Noah for that adjournment wasn't that I'm trying to avoid sentencing. It was more so that Mother Nature obviously wasn't on my side either the last few months. And even if we had gone through that time, I would have given them a little bit of acclamation to the fact that I wasn't there. They graduate in 10 days, and today is going to be the focus of that graduation now. It's not going to be, it should have been about them.
Okay, pause. Did you catch what just happened there? She just asked for a sentencing adjournment, citing her kid's graduation. The judge acknowledged it, moved on. Now we're about to hear from the victims, and this is where courtroom proceedings get real. Victim impact statements aren't just emotional testimony. They directly shape how a judge perceives the scope of harm. These aren't abstract statistics. These are people who trusted an institution and got burned.
I sincerely, I accept what the court's decisions are, and I know I did things terribly wrong, but I do want to make this amends with any way I can and move forward so that past mistakes that everyone is paying for is my past.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Juliet.
I'm sorry.
I do have victims that wish to
Mr. Juliet, are you presenting a victim from the chamber as well? Mr. Juliet, do you have any objection to that?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, so who's going first here? Okay.
I'm Anne-Marie Canella.
Okay.
I took over, I joined MAPS last August and came in as treasurer. And of course I get there and they say, oh, we have an issue. So they said, we need your help. Some money's been taken. We need to go through everything. So a little background, MAPS is a really small Michigan, all volunteers, nonprofit, funded entirely by voluntary memberships, dues, and donations. I went through and looked at all the checks that were deposited into our bank while Ms. Bird was handling things. And it's kind of heartbreaking because, so many of our checks majority of our checks are between $45, $50. We had over the past 2 years, over 400 different families donate money. 76% of all those donations are $100 or less, which is pretty big. And a fair number of the donations we receive are sent in to celebrate, honor, or in memory of someone special. I'm going through these checks and I'm seeing in memory of my dad, money gone. In memory of my neighbor, Susie, gone. Because the money went in, the money went out. A little frustrating. I so empathize as a mom. It's hurting me to do this, but some weeks there were 6, 7, 8 checks written out of our account. Okay, so it's hard to understand how she couldn't realize how much it was adding up. Some of our long-term members are not donating this year. They've selected not to donate. I ran into a neighbor about a month ago, pointing his finger and saying, I can't give you any money. You lost it all. I'm trying to explain to him, we're the victims here. We did not choose to lose this money. It's really difficult to prepare a budget because we basically spend what we get. And how do we spend that money? We spend that money, just go back a sec. The majority of our donations tend to come between May and August, which is the summer months when a lot of people are up here. Our mission is to keep the lake and its surrounding watershed healthy. I think the watershed has been in the news so much lately with the flooding. It does really go from Gaylord to Lake Huron. So our lake is a part of a much bigger, plus for our whole area. Lastly, I just want to make sure everybody knows that we're not all wealthy people. A large number of our property owners are legacy homeowners. Home was passed down, they're year residents, and they're seniors. We are not, there's some big monster houses, but that's not the norm. Many of our neighbors are very similar to myself and my husband. You set a budget, you choose what you want to donate to, you prioritize, and you write your check, and you don't expect it to disappear. So I just feel like we've let our community down, we've let our members down, and a little sad. But anyways, I appreciate your time today, and thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's break that down. Annie just walked the court through something quietly devastating. Over 400 families donated to this lake preservation nonprofit, most giving $45 to $50, many in memory of loved ones. That money is gone. And here's the ripple effect that's easy to miss. She's not just talking about stolen funds. She's talking about broken trust within an entire community. Long-term donors are pulling out. Neighbors are pointing fingers at the organization, the victim instead of the perpetrator. That's called secondary harm, and it's exactly why theft from nonprofits hits differently.
Mr. Juliet. Sir, welcome. You want to state your name and then
Thank you
tell
very
me
much.
anything that you want to.
I'm John Gannon. I'm the Vice President of the Lake Preservation Society, and been summer resident since I was 5 years old on Mullet Lake when there wasn't even electricity on the east side. I started the year-round research program at the University of Michigan Biological Station, and we've been permanent residents here for about eight years now. So I'm a retired aquatic ecologist, so I have a lot of perspective on the work that MAPS does. I'm glad to join them when I became a permanent resident up here. So the mission of the MAPS is to keep Mullet Lake and its surrounding watershed healthy. Mullet Lake is just a small part, as Anne Marie said. The watershed not only goes almost all the way to Gaylord, but almost all the way to Petoskey and almost all the way to Cross Village, and that's why we have such a huge problem with the snow melt and the flooding that's going on right now. So I think the work that we do is very important. It's water quality, shoreline restoration, and protection. It's going to be huge now with the issues that we're dealing with. We do work with fish, invasive species, and other things. And because the lake is part of this larger watershed, our donations also support the Typically Mid Watershed Council, Sturgeon for Tomorrow, Michigan Waterfront Alliance, Huron Pines, and we support the Sheboygan County Sheriff's Department in a big way during their patrols for safety. We bought one of their wave runners, and we bought the dock at Jack's Marina where it's kept. So we're a very important part of providing support for the Sheriff's Department and safety. If we lose these donations, we really have to cut our support. And I have another hat. I'm the president of the Straits Area Audubon Society in that capacity. I'm on the advisory committee for the current revision of the 10-year Sheboygan County Planning Master Plan. And one of the issues is that you kind of look at these lakes, they haven't changed much what's the big deal? They're pretty good water quality. But with climate change, this area has been targeted on long-range planning for a climate refuge. We're expecting a lot more people to be moving into this area because of the abundance of water. So the critical issue is, how are we going to maintain the quality of the lakes and the watershed with lots more people here? So we need to be very, very proactive so that we can take advantage of the economic opportunities with more people moving here, but without degrading the environment that makes this area so important. So just more emphasis on the importance of what MAPS does and the importance of getting that money returned so we can continue to do the good work for the area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Just that Mr. Ruderski wants to address the board.
Okay. Very good. Welcome, sir.
My name is Travis Ruderski. I'm the current treasurer, and at the time of this incident, the president of the Sheboygan Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. The Chamber is a nonprofit organization led by a group of volunteers and is operated day to day by a small number of paid employees. The Chamber is made up of hundreds of local businesses that share a collective interest in advocating for the prosperity of Sheboygan. I became involved with the Chamber for two main reasons. I was born and raised in Sheboygan. I left the state for work, and I returned mainly for the opportunity to become a small business owner. I have a deep-rooted pride in our town, and I am a person devoted to being part of a solution and improvement rather than complaining or blaming a situation. I felt I could help make a positive impact on our town when asked to join the Chamber board. Since being home in Sheboygan, I've become active in multiple service organizations and found that the volunteers who dedicate their time to so many positive causes in our community are a very small group of people. And it's a constant challenge of all these organizations to find and develop individuals who are willing to commit to executive leadership boards. I have personal examples of how this act against the Chamber has affected me, and I have a deeper concern about how it could reach much further than what is realized on the surface. Personally, as this situation was discovered and investigated, I spent hours over the course of weeks working with law enforcement and accounting to put my best effort into protecting the Chamber membership, all as a volunteer. This process took time away from my business, other nonprofits that I'm involved in, and more importantly, my family. The concern I have and cannot quantify is how much a situation like this affects our volunteers. That same small group of dedicated people that are willing to help Sheboygan out in so many ways. Volunteering is work to begin with, and I feel being taken advantage of is undoubtedly placing more apprehension in the minds of those who already sacrifice personally in the name of community service. This situation placed unneeded and unnecessary tension on the Chamber. I received calls and messages from Chamber volunteers, members, and the public trying to understand how this situation happened and what the Chamber was willing to do about it. This justified concern was an indication that one thing may be put to the test which takes years to build and can be destroyed in an instant within a small community, and that's their trust. Thankfully, the team in place was proactive in dealing with the situation, but that alone cannot take away the potential damage done within our membership when trust is questioned of the staff that are paid to represent them. This question of trust could also tarnish the reputation of the volunteers chosen to lead the Chamber, business leaders who give their time back to our community with the mission of making our town a better place. In conclusion, I feel restitution for our members is paramount, as this money was not that of an individual or business, but that of a membership who trusted the Chamber to be a positive voice in the betterment of Sheboygan, not diverting it for personal gain. I also asked the court to consider the breach of trust and potential damage that it could filter through the service community within Sheboygan when sentencing. It is my personal experience that those affected beyond the Chamber include volunteers and local businesses who are the heartbeat of our small community. The time and trust taken away from their families and organizations will not be repaid monetarily. So I ask that the burdens brought onto these volunteers because of this case be considered as the court determines appropriate consequences. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity and time to stand before you.
This is the third victim statement, and notice the shift in framing. Travis isn't just talking about money, he's talking about the chilling effect on volunteerism. Think about that. Small communities run on a tiny pool of dedicated people willing to give their time for free. When that trust gets broken, the damage doesn't just sit in a ledger. It makes people hesitant to step up again. He's essentially arguing that the real sentence the community is serving isn't in dollars, it's in eroded social capital, and that cannot be repaid.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Juliet, any recommendations from you?
Yes, Your Honor, the sentencing guidelines are 0 to 6 months. So the court has to find reasonable grounds to incarcerate the defendant. As I was listening to victims address the court, one reason really sort of popped out at me that I didn't previously consider. That is, I guess, the collateral harm that they're going to suffer. I believe victims from MAPS, excuse me, said that it's going to be tough for them to get donations in the future because of this, because their members simply lack trust in them anymore. And, you know, that's not something that can just be solved with this sentence or anything like that. So that's one reasonable ground to incarcerate the defendant. And these aren't types of, this isn't an investment case from an employer where somebody was stealing cash out of the till. This is an investment from a nonprofit. Again, these are donations that are given to these nonprofits from citizens of the community. So again, it goes to the trust factor and holding a position like this in a nonprofit. Again, that's another reasonable ground to impose incarceration. I guess I would take issue with the fact that, this was just a slip up. This was a series of acts, almost worth a year, just continuing to write checks to herself from the chamber and MAPS. So she knew what she was doing. I guess my last point is, in a lot of financial larceny investment type cases, defendants oftentimes, to their benefit, show up to sentencing with some sort of restitution, even though they're not required to at that point. And in this case, the defendant hasn't even had a job the last 9 months while this case has been pending. And there's been no attempts to pay any restitution today. And again, it's not required, but it certainly looks good. So again, the guidelines are 0 to 6. I think I've outlined sufficient reasonable grounds for the court to impose incarceration. As to the amount, I'll defer to the court.
Thank you. Ms. Bird, if you'd please stand for the court sentence.
The prosecution just laid out a compelling case for why probation alone isn't enough here, and I want to highlight the legal mechanics at play. The sentencing guidelines are 0 to 6 months, which means the presumption is probation. No jail unless the court finds reasonable grounds to go further. The prosecutor just argued. 3. The collateral harm to nonprofits' reputations, the breach of a specific position of trust, and the fact that this was a sustained pattern of conduct, not a one-time lapse. He also noted that no restitution has been attempted in 9 months, that last point. Quietly brutal.
Ms. Bird, and you've expressed, I think, some genuine remorse that what you did was wrong and was a breach of trust. Hearing from the victims, including from the chamber, I know that charge is dismissed, but the restitution is rolled in to here by plea agreement. What's really striking from this is that when you steal from a nonprofit organization, that is far worse than stealing from an employer. And I don't say that to minimize people who embezzle or steal from their employer. But if you think of it just as a person in the community, you would never, as a consumer, say, well, I'm not going to shop at that store because they had an employee who stole from them. wouldn't affect your decision as a consumer at all. But where you write a donation, that might affect, as they've explained today, their legitimate concern that I hope they can overcome with their members and with their supporters. And the other thing is that, if I go and I buy a candy bar from a store, I get the candy bar. And then if the employee steals from the employer, I still got my candy bar. But if I donate to an organization hoping that they will do some good with that money, and someone like you steals that money, the good doesn't get done. And these donations come, Mullet Lake is too big for one person to keep healthy. That's why dozens or hundreds, I don't know how many volunteers they have or supporters that they have, but that's why one person can't keep Mullet Lake healthy. So a great number of people in the community band together to do it. And the same thing with the Chamber of Commerce, to make the community and the shopping and dining areas in our town, and the lodging areas better, not just for our residents, but for our tourism industry. That's too big of a task for one person to do. So a number of businesses and members in the community band together and share their resources to accomplish that good mission. So when you steal from one of those organizations, you really are stealing from hundreds of people in the community. So I've got people here as the victims. In one sense, they're the victims, but really they're just the representatives for the hundreds of victims of your crimes that you committed over and over and over. If you were down on your luck and stole $2,000 from this organization, did it once, and then were caught and were remorseful, that would be a really bad thing, and we'd be here about that. But this was you stealing in drips and drabs at least dozens of times, continuing to make that choice, partly to fuel a gambling addiction. That's just really an unfortunate series of choices. And I'm glad that you're doing some hard work in counseling to better understand why'd you make those choices. What can you do in your life to kind of fix that? To a large measure in our lives, we are what we do. And so, you're a thief. Doesn't mean you have to stay a thief. And I hope for good things for you in the future. Honestly, I hope for good things for every defendant that appears in front of me. I hope for good things in the future. I don't hope for bad. We impose a sentence that we think is just, but it's not out of some vindictiveness or anything like that. In any event, taking all these things into account, including the information in the pre-sentence report and the input from the victims of these crimes, I'm going to place you, Ms. Bird, on probation for the maximum initial term of 3 years. That can be extended by law somewhat, but the initial term is capped at 3 years. We'll impose that. That's subject to the terms and conditions listed on pages 2 and 3 in the pre-sentence report. The chief rehabilitative goal is to pay restitution, of course. While on probation, you can't be in a position where you have direct control over or access to another person's money. You do have to seek and maintain legitimate full-time employment. There's a crime victims assessment of $130, court costs of $350. You have to comply with DNA testing and pay a $60 fee, $68 in state costs. There's monthly supervision fee to the Department of Corrections. You have to participate in, you have to sign a release of information to your supervising agent with your therapist. You have to continue in that therapy as directed by your agent. There's a restitution ordered per the plea agreement of $53,824.06. That's $51,726 to the Mullet Lake Area Preservation Society and $2,098.04 to the, those don't add up entirely. Maybe that's 6 cents to the Sheboygan Area Chamber of Commerce. You have to execute a wage assignment to pay restitution if you're employed and miss 2 regularly scheduled payments. If you fail to make reasonable efforts to do that, then you can be brought in on probation violations or contempt of court and face additional incarceration. And I do think the guidelines at 0 to 6 start with a presumption that we should give probation with no jail, unless there's reasonable grounds for incarceration. I think as the prosecutor outlined and as I've described, I think there are reasonable grounds for incarceration. That's the sheer number of victims, the impact that it's had on the mission of these organizations, or could likely have, the risk that it puts the missions of those organizations at risk of harm, the fact that you were in a position of trust as a treasurer, and also, you know, we haven't talked about this, but some of these were, you wrote a fake donation from one nonprofit to another nonprofit, like Sturgeon for Tomorrow, and then you pocketed that money. So that there's some downstream victims that we haven't even really talked about. And just the sheer number of the decisions that you made. Also, I take into account that this plea for reduced charge avoids a much more serious sentence that you could have faced. With these charges as they were initially charged, it could have, this is a case that could have resulted in your being sent to the state prison. I mean, it's a really serious matter. I think given your lack of prior record and your apparently genuine remorse, I mean, it seems genuine. The only reason I say apparently is the prosecutor's right. You've had 9 months to have some kind of job and show up with something for restitution. And, you know, so I don't know how where you're at on that, but I think those are reasons why the prosecutor reduced the charges and nobody's looking to send you to prison today. Okay, so, but I do think that some incarceration is called for. I think there's honestly even grounds for a departure from those advisory guidelines, but I think a more measured approach, and one that might be strong enough to certainly get your attention, is to impose a sentence at the upper end of those advisory guidelines. And so I am going to order that you serve 6 months in the Sheboygan County Jail with credit for 1 day previously served, and you'll serve that sentence forthwith. I will indicate that you...
And there it is, 6 months in county jail, 3 years of probation, over $53,000 in restitution ordered. Let's put this in context. The judge could have departed from the guidelines entirely and sent her to state prison that was on the table given the original charges. Instead, he sentenced at the maximum of the advisory guidelines while still showing measured restraint. His candy bar analogy. That's going to stick with you because it perfectly captures why stealing from a nonprofit is uniquely damaging. When you steal from a store, customers still got their product. When you steal from a cause people believed in, the good never gets done. That's the harm that can't be undone with a check.
I'll indicate that I have no objection to your participation in CBT programming in the jail if they determine you eligible. There's some counseling style classes that sometimes are offered in the jail that you can earn some credit on your sentence for. All right, Ms. Bird, if you want to appeal from your conviction or my sentences or both, you can file an application to the Court of Appeals. If you can't afford a lawyer and you want one appointed, you have to make that request within 6 months to be timely. We're going to hand you a piece of paper about that appeal. I ask you to initial one copy. The other one's for you to fill out if you wish to appeal. Also, you are eligible to petition for early discharge of probation at the halfway point. We're going to hand you a piece of paper about that. If you've paid off the restitution and you haven't violated, halfway through the probation period, you can petition to be discharged. All right, good luck to you, Ms. Burke.
I did want to say, just as far as the restitution, I guess I wasn't aware that that was the opportunity. I do have a plan and I have some family assistants that were planning to help me. However, I would still be paying them back as well. And I had some plans for employment as well. So it's not that I'm ignoring that. It's, had I guess, retrospect, I would have handled that differently and before this appearance.
All right, well, we'll want to see that plan put into effect, or we'll be seeing each other again. Okay, good luck. All right, and Mr. Nightingale, you still have Mr. Noble, is that
Yes.
Okay, let's get that done, and then I know we're gonna dip into the noon hour here. In fact, if you want, we're gonna be going into the noon hour a little bit, so I'm gonna make a judgment call here. We'll call Mr. Brown at 1:30, not 1.
Yeah.
And we'll probably call Mr. Harley's case at 1:30 as well. So we're gonna begin our afternoon docket at 1:30 because we're gonna be going. All right, so we'll call next People v. Austin Noble. It's 2 file numbers, 25-6985 FH for a probation violation hearing and 26-7171 FH for an arraignment. Counsel, you want to state your appearances, please, beginning with people.
Prosecutor.
Morning, Judge. No, and I don't, hey, Commissioner Noble, here's in person. This week, right?
All right, and Mr., for purposes of arraignment, have you reviewed the charging document with Mr. Noble?
Yes, Your Honor, we would wait the formal reading of the charges and his rights at this point.
Okay, and has he wished to plead to those charges?
Not guilty.
We'll enter a not guilty plea on your behalf, Mr. Noble, to the charge of possession of methamphetamine with the drug double and habitual fourth. And also, it looks like a use of methamphetamine misdemeanor. Is a forensic center referral requested?
No, Your Honor.
Estimated length of trial?
1 day.
All right, appropriate for docket call on that June 9th date?
Yes, Your Honor, and so the court's aware, we have submitted an application for a recovery court here in this county as to both matters. Have Mr. Noble.
Okay. So let's schedule this for a docket call in 7171 for June 9th at 10:50 a.m. And then we'll continue the probation violation hearing in 6985 to the same date and time, June 9th at 10:50 a.m. And hopefully then we'll be able to review any recovery court application and we can see how we're going to go forward. Okay.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Noble has also just asked me if it's possible for the court to grant him permission to participate in a GED program inside the jail. I don't know if he needs the court's permission, but that's what he's asked me.
Well, I mean, I don't know that, I don't know what the jail rules are about that when you've got pending charges. I can't like order that he gets credit for something that he's not, we haven't sentenced him on either a probation violation or the charge. So I don't know, how that works, but
I don't think he wants, well, I'm sure he wants the credit, but I don't think that's the something to ask. I think he wants to continue participating.
yeah, I don't know what the jail's position is with regard to pretrial detainees with that. I think they're not eligible for those if they're in pretrial detention, but he can talk to the jail administrator about that or the jail about that.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes your matters?
For now.
Okay, yes. Oh, that's right. Good. All right, Miss Madison, we can call People v. Damian Slavin. And I'm sorry we got behind schedule for you there. Yes. Indeed. All right, this is People v. Slavin, file 26-7130 FH. Counsel, you want to state your appearances beginning with People?
Prosecutor. Lauren Madison for the defendant Damian Slavin, who is seated to my right.
Okay, we're here today for, looks like docket call to see sort of, are we okay, or are we ready to schedule this for trial? Is there a resolution? Are there motions to be filed? Where are we heading with this? I know, I just want to make sure we did get your request to appear by Zoom and say that was okay.
I wanted to see you, Damian,
Okay.
just briefly, but I appreciate it, Your Honor.
All right, so what's our status?
Judge, we are primarily focusing on mitigation at this juncture. We did receive MIDC funding for a mitigation expert. She is preparing a report that will be tendered to the prosecutor for purposes of plea negotiation. I don't think we need a trial date at this point, given that.
So you want us to continue the docket call a bit then?
Yes, Your Honor.
If we put it on June 9th, does that give you sufficient time for that, do you believe? Or should we put it out to say July 7th?
I think June 9th should be fine if it looks like it's not.
If it looks like you don't even have the report, or you just got it a couple days before, just get with the prosecutor, and we would probably prefer to do a step to adjourn rather than come here if we can't.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, so let's continue this then. Any objection to that, Ms. Goodrich?
No objection.
Okay, so we'll continue this to June 9th. Morning workout okay for you? I won't put you on at the tail end.
Okay.
You've earned earlier.
I get a little credit.
Yeah. Say 10 a.m.
I could actually do later morning, if that would be okay.
Later morning?
Is that okay?
11:10 work okay?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, we'll schedule this for a docket call on June 9th at 11:10 a.m. I will just indicate on the order that Zoom appearances would be authorized. So you can come in person if you wish, you can Zoom in if you wish. If you want to let us know so that we can plan on whether to bring your client out or put them in a Zoom room from the jail, that helps them coordinate that.
Okay, I can confidently say that I will be Zooming for that one.
Okay. All right.
Let everybody know now.
All right, anything further from the defense?
No, thank
From
you.
the
Your Honor.
people?
No.
Okay, you're all set today, Mr. Steve. All right, and then that brings us to our last item on the morning docket. It's now bled a little bit into the early afternoon here. People be Joseph Stribick. Counsel, you want to state your appearances, please?
Mr. Goodrich, Lake County Prosecutor.
That is Spencer on behalf of Joe Stribick.
Good morning, Mr. Stribick. Well, good afternoon. All right, so we're here for sentencing in a newer file 26-7137 FH for possession of methamphetamine, 10-year max, and a misdemeanor larceny, 93 days. Advisory guidelines range at 10 to 23. We're also here for sentencing in 3 probation files, 25-6980, 6981, and 6982. Mr. Spencer, have you had a chance to review both the pre-sentence report in the new file and the probation violation report in the other files?
I have, Your Honor, and I find no objections to it.
Okay, any
Seems to be
scoring?
factually correct.
Okay, and any scoring challenges?
None.
Ms. Goodrich, any additions, corrections, or scoring challenges from the people?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Spencer, anything you want to say on behalf of your client? Go ahead.
Your Honor, Joseph is 45 years old. He knows what he did was wrong. He accepts responsibility for that, and he's paying a heavy price for that also. He's lost his freedom. He's lost his home. He's also lost his wife in this matter. He has support of his family. His father's here in the courtroom today. Joseph wants to beat this addiction that he has, and he's going to take advantage of any programs that's available in prison. His hope is that once he's released from prison, he can lead a drug-free and a productive life in the community. He does have the skills necessary to make a good living here. Joseph hopes that his life and his drug addiction will somehow be an example to other people that choose to use drugs and what could happen to them if they do use drugs. Your Honor, we're asking that the court follow the recommendations in the pre-sentence recommendation report, not exceed the minimum sentence that was imposed of 6 years in Emmett County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stribick, you don't have to say anything today, but you're welcome to. Is there anything you want to say?
I just want to apologize.
Okay. Ms. Goodrich, any recommendations from the people?
Oh, yes, Your Honor, thank you. We are here because on October 20th of 2025, the defendant had picked up prescription medications for an inmate contrary to the recovery court's rules. He dropped off some, but not all of the inmates' prescriptions, keeping one for himself. He then lied to the police about it. The police then subsequently searched his home, found methamphetamine as well as multiple syringes. He's 45 years old. He was 17 at the time of his first arrest. He has a significant criminal history with 14 felonies and 14 misdemeanors. Looks like they started in about 1998 and pretty steadily thereafter. He was on probation and in recovery court at the time of this offense. The guidelines for this case are 10 to 23. I agree with the PSI recommendation for 23 months. And then as to the probation violation, I would ask for the low end of the guidelines at 72 months to comport with the plea agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stribick, if you want to stand for the court sentence, please. Joe, I mean, we really did hope for good things when you were in the recovery court program, and we saw some progress that you'd made, and you had a good attitude about that. And I think that you had at least for some period of time, a sincere intention. You know, the follow through was spotty, and you know, some really poor judgment in this case kind of wrecked your chances there. I think the fact that the new charge, like the possession of methamphetamine that I'm sentencing you for on the new charge, it's a very small amount as I understand it. And, you know, for those reasons, the prosecutor has agreed for us to sentence you on the low end of those. You've got big numbers, 72 to 240. And, you know, there are other people who have a lot of felonies that have been removed from recovery court, got a lot more than 72 when they had those numbers.
I know that.
So I know that, you know, 6 years in prison is nothing to sneeze at. I know that, but so this could have ended a lot worse for you. So you're 44 years of age now. You're going to parole and still have a lot of life ahead of you, Joe. At some point, you got to decide, how tired are you of all this? And you know, you don't have to just keep spending your life in jail and prison. I wish you would do something different. You know, the little bit of interactions I've had with you over the years, you're not an aggressive guy. You're not a disrespectful guy. You're not hostile to people. I think you're a helpful person. You've got some good things that you could build on. You know, you got your dad who supports you, frankly, more than he should. I mean, he's posted more money to get you out of jail when I put you in. I wish I could give him a little bit of it back. You know, but your dad's still there for you. In any event, this is just a day that makes me kind of sad, Joe. But what I'm going to do, taking all these things into account in the new file, the advisory guideline range at 10 to 23 months, I am going to sentence you as recommended by the Department of Corrections. So I'm going to commit you to the Michigan Department of Corrections for a period of not less than 23 months, nor more than 10 years, with credit for 85 days previously served. There's a crime victims assessment of $130, court cost of $350, and state cost of $118. On the misdemeanor larceny, I'll order you serve 85 days jail with credit for 85 served. And that is within the advisory guidelines, and we'll run it concurrent with all your other sentences. In 6980, possession methamphetamine habitual fourth, life maximum, 10 to 46 guideline range. I'll revoke your probation, commit you to the Michigan Department of Corrections for a term of not less than 46 months, nor more than 25 years, exercising my discretion to set the maximum with the habitual fourth, give you credit for 91 days previously served, and reassess any fines and costs that were previously assessed in the amount of any unpaid balance due and owing. And that's within the advisory guidelines. In 6981 and 6982, both of those each have one count of a delivery of methamphetamine habitual fourth with a life maximum. In both those files, I'll revoke your probation and commit you to the Michigan Department of Corrections at the low end of the guidelines consistent with the plea agreement to 70, not less than 72 months, nor more than 25 years, exercising my discretion to set the max under the habitual fourth statute. Give you credit in each of those files for 91 days previously served. And reassess any fines and costs that were previously assessed and the amount of any unpaid balance that remains due and owing. Those are all sentences within the advisory guidelines, and they are consistent with the plea agreement. They will all run concurrent with each other and with any other sentences that you happen to be serving. So, Mr. Strubik, in all 4 of those files, if you want to file an appeal, you'd have to file an application to the Court of Appeals. If you wanted me to give you a lawyer, you'd have to ask me within 6 months for it to be timely. We're going to hand you a piece of paper in all 4 of those files, and 2 copies in each of them. Ask you to initial 1 copy for us, so we have a record we gave it to you. You can fill out the other one if you want to take an appeal. Do you have any questions for me? Okay. Good luck, Joey. I mean, you've got choices to make while you're. That's okay. You know, you've got choices to make while you're inside too. So you don't have to wait till you're paroled to start building a different life.
Yeah, I'm doing good in there.
Okay.
Working, staying out of trouble.
Okay. Good luck. Thank you, gentlemen, for the transport. Be safe. We'll be in recess until 1:30. We'll adjourn our 1 p.m. docket to 1:50.
Thank you.